Homelessness 2.0, day 45. Well, I'm not going to be driving tomorrow when I thought I'd be driving. It will be instead around this time, I think. Let me go ahead and unplug the phone right now for a second. Yeah, I'll be driving right around now because it's 10:47. My lesson starts at 10 a.m. So there's a bit of a miscommunication in the email. Because like the first email in the email chain that talked about timing, they had asked me last week, I want to say it's on Friday, would I be available tomorrow, 16th, at 10 a.m.? And I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't want to have to get up that early. But I'm like, I need to get it over with. I need to deal with this shit in one way or another. And then, like, there was a follow-up, and then they said that it would be, but it was a different person, and they were saying it was going to be 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And so I'm like, wait, hold on a second. And then I got a text. So that was like, okay, so I'm guessing, I don't know. But then I got a text, and I checked the online portal for their classes, because they have, like an online thing. And they were saying it was like 10 a.m. And I was like, oh shit, hold on. Let's make sure that I'm in the right place at the right time. The last thing I want to do is show up at 6 p.m. when I need to be there at 10 a.m. And then also I don't want to show up at 10 a.m. when I have to be there at 6 p.m. because then that's going to be a big old inconvenience for me. So I hit him up and say, hey, what's the deal with this? I was professional. I don't think, miscommunication happens. I'm not going to be an asshole. But, asking for clarification is important in situations like that. And so that's what I did. And also in the process, I learned about the car as well. It's going to be a Honda Iconic with a Q. It's an electric car, so that's going to be interesting. So just to give you an idea of my driving experience, I've only driven internal combustion engines, and most of them, well, all of them, were, I want to say, 14 years or older at this point in time. Because the last car that I drove, when I got it in 2010, or thereabouts, yeah, when I got it in 2010, because then I left out of Dallas 2011. When I got it in 2010, it was a 4-year-old car. It was... See, it's one of those things, like, it hit kind of like this perfect, like, area of where I would, like, if I'm going to buy a new car, I ain't buying a brand new car. It's not happening. I'm going to buy a used, newer car. And this hit right in that spot. Now, it's not the car that I wanted to buy when I went to the dealership. And like I said, I pretty much got fleeced on that whole situation. Which is unfortunate, because that seems like that's common practice. I hate that shit. It shouldn't be... Like, I shouldn't have to fucking worry about, like, haggling or any of this crap. If your car is in fucking storage, if you have an inventory of a specific car, and there's a price on it, I should just be able to buy it for that price. And it shouldn't be, like, I hate it. Like, we have built a culture around... I mean, part of the video that I was recording yesterday that ended up getting fucked up. But we incentivize the wrong kinds of things in this stupid country, which is one of the reasons why I would still rather just fucking leave. We've got 100 years of this cultural sort of like class war with regards to just cars, and there's so many other things that are going on. And it's like, why can't we just get a good deal and then just buy the car and say fuck off? Just like you can go to the store and buy some groceries or buy some pants or whatever. Or buy your, You slim fast in your protein bars so that you can just take on life because it sucks enough as it is. Anyway, the reason I brought all that up is because the oldest car that I'd had when I bought it in 2010 was a 4-year model. Like it was a newer model of the Ford Focus. That model came out 2006, but the version that I bought was the 2008 iteration of that model. The reason why that's important with regards to me creating that distinction when it comes to driving cars in general is that the first iteration, or rather the first new iteration of any car or any model in general, is usually going to be buggy as fuck. Like, don't buy a brand new PS5 if you can get your hands on one. Just don't. There's no point in it. It's probably going to be fucked up. They almost, like, I have been alive since 1981. The world of consoles is something I have experienced all of my life in one form or another. Even if I've never had all of them, I have experienced them through either personal first-hand experience or through all the various stories that have existed. Like, just recently, Microsoft wants to sell a poster that is the red ring of death. Like, there are so many people right now who probably don't, well, they probably do know. I mean, if they're buying consoles, they probably do. But it's getting to that point where kids and young adults only probably kind of know about it, but didn't experience it. I'm pretty sure some of my friends back in the day had them. I'm almost certain of it, in fact. Because it was so commonplace for that stupid thing to happen on your Xbox 360. And it's like, the PS2. Like, the PS2 was probably one of the most solid PlayStations that I've known about. But then, like, if you look at the PS1, the PS1 was the first of its kind in that regard. And they improved upon it when they made the DualShock. So, right then and there, that was the better version anyway. So it's typically better to get version 2 if you can get that. Now, when version 2 comes out, depending on circumstances, of course. Like, okay, speaking of PS2, maybe not so much version 2, more like version 1.2. Because the second version of the PS2 came out, and it was the skinny one. And a lot of people had problems with that, because it's skinnier. And a smaller device often comes with its own difficulties that, you know, a larger device may or may not have. Because now you've got all of the same components that are crammed together, and so how they're working together, I mean, even if they stress test the shit out of them, doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna happen the same way as everybody else. The car that I got, again, that model version of the Focus had come out in 2006. The one that I ended up buying was a 2008 model, so it was 2 years older. That is the youngest of a car that I want to buy, is a 2-year-old model in that regard. I don't want to buy a brand new car. I can't afford a car, so I don't even think about buying cars. But when I used to think about cars, because I would drive a car all the time, and I'd be like, well, maybe I'll get a car in the future. That was something I thought about a lot. One rule I had considered is, like, you shouldn't buy a car at all that is more expensive than your yearly take home. Like, if the price tag of the car is more expensive than your yearly take home, find something else. Because, and I mean, I don't think about it again because I don't think about cars in general, but my thinking somewhere was probably like affordability. Because, I mean, it's like, if you're making $50K a year, okay, yeah, you could probably afford a $50,000 car. That shouldn't be too problematic. You know, you get a 5-year lease, 5-year loan, whatever. could probably pay that off without too much of a problem in affecting your overall, financial situation. $10,000 a year, you're not in a good situation. You're probably not in a good situation to be buying a $10,000 car, though, to be honest. And that's the shitty thing about our society. Is like, if you're that low, you're poverty. There's no point in hell. You're barely making enough to scrape by. You probably don't need to be buying a car. But it's a rule of thumb. It's a guideline. It's not a strict set. But it's easier to practice the more money you have. And so it also makes it to where you can save more, too. But if you absolutely need to buy a car and you're making $10,000 a year, consider adding a couple extra steps into it. Okay, so the car would be $10,000 a year. But if you can't really afford a $10,000 car for whatever reason, then maybe figure out how much you would be paying per year and maybe just buy a car for that price instead. So about $2,000 is about what you would probably want to pay for in a situation like that. So obviously it depends on circumstances, not just finances. But finances is the biggest factor. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is because as far as I can recall, and obviously I could be wrong, and I'm not going to go look it up right now, but electric cars weren't really a thing in 2010. Like, if they were more concept cars, or they were extremely sparse. They were concept / experimental within the world of consumer cars. Like, they weren't really a thing. So in the last 10 years, electric cars have become a massive thing. I mean, yes, they existed. Obviously, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I hate the fact that I even know this, but in the second Transformers film, maybe it was the third one, the live action ones with Shia LaBeouf, I can't remember exactly which one. I think it was Dark of the Moon. I don't fucking remember. Anyway, they went to Egypt. And the reason I know about this is because there were two really over-the-top and extremely stereotypical, to the point of, like, borderline racism characters that were cars. And they were, like, EV cars. I think they were both Chevy Volts or something like that. I don't remember exactly when that movie came out. But even at that point, they weren't a commonplace thing like now. From what I can tell, from when I'm walking out on the streets and stuff, even ICE cars, internal combustion engine cars, even ICE cars now are so much more electric. Now, obviously not fully electric because it still use gas, but like this car, from what I can tell, is a full-on EV car. And that's going to be interesting because they accelerate differently too. Now, I have driven shitty cars. I have a heavy foot with regards to that because, like, my first car was a piece of shit. My second car was not as much of a piece of shit, but still a piece of shit. My third car, kind of a piece of shit. And all of them, and then, the final car, not a piece of shit, but not great either. But I could tell, perfect segue. That last car, the day that I bought it, I almost got a speeding ticket. I got a warning. I got pulled over for speeding the day I bought the car. Because I still wasn't fully, what the hell I've got going on? I guess it's part of the nut butter bar. That's just kind of, it's got tiny little peanuts and stuff in it. So anyway. But literally the day of, I almost got a speeding ticket, a warning, and I know for a fact that car was more responsive. So that is something that I'm having to think about, I'm to worry about. So I looked into like the nature of the car, and there's this actually a really good video showing the interior of it. It's a nice fucking car. It's probably like if you want to say that this is even a thing, but it's like a budget luxury car. I haven't actually seen the price of it though. But it's a sedan, which is a thing that I would drive. And again, that's going to be now. I don't really know the traffic situation at this time of day. From what I can recall, it's not going to be as bad as it could be. Which is good. And I mean, I've been on the roads because not everywhere. Pasadena is where I spent most of my time on my bike. And, it's not, I mean, traffic out here is bad, especially during your typical traffic times. People going to work and stuff. But the thing is that because there's so many people out here, every time of the day seems busy. Like, if you compared it to my hometown, or even in certain areas of Dallas, because like my hometown was Mesquite, which is a suburb of Dallas, and whatever. I didn't know what the hell I was going to say about that, but it doesn't matter. But like, there's so much space to drive in those towns. Like, even when Dallas traffic is bad, it's nothing compared to this place. And so, like, I have to keep that in mind. Now, again, I rode my bike all the time. And I rode my bike in some harrowing situations. Now, I would say, with regards to that, even though while riding my bike I was less safe, I felt like I was in more control than I ever do feel in a car, because I'm much more aware of my surroundings. Like, it's a visceral sensation and not, I'm not protected by a giant fucking cage, essentially. Which is why it was like basic, every time I got off my bike, I was basically having a heart attack. Because I felt like I was getting my ass run over. Checking to see. Okay, I'm still recording because you never know these days. I'm a fart. Oh, there we go. Anyway. So there's that. That's what's on the chopping block. I've got to go to the store. Probably I'm going to try to go to the store today. Sometimes it's just I don't feel like getting up and going. Like I'm still feeling tired right now. I woke up about 3 hours ago, which is probably part of it. Because I went to bed about 2. So I didn't really get a whole lot of sleep. And this is going to be, my breakfast tomorrow. Because I've got to get up. I've got to walk to the train station or ride the bus. Either way, it doesn't matter. But walk to the train station is like maybe 10 minutes tops. Not even. And, then there's the 2-hour session, of course. And then there's the come back. But, I got to drive the train off to Santa Monica. And that'll take most of the time. And so I've got to be there on time. I don't want to be late. But then when I get there, I don't want to be there for so long. Because it's supposed to be pretty cold tomorrow. I don't think it gets above 55 tomorrow. If even that. And so I don't want to be standing out in the cold the whole time either. So I've got to dress appropriately. I've got to think. Got to plan ahead and all that stuff, and blah, blah, blah. And that's pretty much the life of somebody who doesn't have a car. You got to do all that stuff. You got to prep. You've got to put in more time ahead just in case, because you cannot rely on the public transit to be as on time as you want it to be. It's not as reliable as it could be. And so because of that, I gotta deal with that extra shit. And, it's like one might be saying, well, you're definitely making a great fucking selling. You're really hyping up this whole driving thing. It's like we could do better. We could. And there are a lot of reasons why we're not. And it's frustrating. But I want to shift to something entirely different. So I just made a comment online that kind of threw my own self for, a ride. It was talking about an old conversation that I had with a former friend of mine. His name is Jesse. And he was going into cardiology school at the time that we had a conversation about the seasons of, Earth. And I cannot remember specifically what his reasoning was, but he was in argument with me about the fact that the Earth is tilted. Like, the Earth's tilted. That's why we have seasons. That's why we have shorter days at certain parts of the year, and we have longer days at other parts of the year. I mean, we even got to the point where we even had an argument, and I think it was roughly on the same day, where he was like, Obama was like his age. I was like, no, Obama's like 10 years older than you. But at one point, and I think it was because people didn't text really as much at that time, because texting wasn't really a thing. I mean, it was, but it was more of a, and I mean, there was a stereotype kind of for a reason, I think, but it was kind of a teenage girl thing, I think, at the time. It's been a long time. I don't remember much. But I mean, I worked also texts weren't free. Used to be, it was like 5 or 10 cents a text, so people didn't fucking text. But email was free. If you had internet, you could just email people. So that's how a lot of people communicated. That's how me and my friends communicated a lot. And that's how I communicated with him at one point. We had this argument. It was probably like an hour long or something. And then I went home, and then I was like, here's some data on this shit. And his response was, and I could probably find it. His response, though, was, you just want to be right, or something along those lines. And I'm like, no. And I didn't say this at the time because I had just said it today. I was like, no, I want you to be right. And it got me thinking about the way that I've approached fact-checking and all that stuff in my life, and how I've approached just conversations like that in general. And it is something I need to work on. He was right. I always wanted to be right. Now, caveat is, I wanted to be right because I wanted that information to be appropriate. I was correcting people because I wanted them to be right. I didn't truly feel that way, though. I feel that way more, though, nowadays. But I'm still a combative asshole. And I'm still a know-it-all. But me saying that, me typing that out in a comment, it ticked off. It ticked off. That almost sounds like I'm pissed off. But which I think is funny that we instead of saying pissed off, we say ticked off. I'm like, why? What? We're not ticking off a box or something. Whatever. Anyway, I'm combative because I have been like this all my life, and often because I have been. So it is a repeated process because I have been trying to get people the correct information as long as I can remember. Even with my parents, I've had arguments about stupid fucking things because they were wrong. And I grew up with them being the people that they are and the mistreatment and everything. And so I then reciprocated with similar behavior. I still, to this day, remember getting that slap in the back of the fucking head and having an argument with my dad about seeing a preview for the television show Deep Space Nine. It was a preview for a television show. He thought it was a fucking movie. I was like, no, it's a television show. Like, one, you would think he would be excited for that. Because he was a big TNG fan. He was probably a big original series fan, too. But, we were at a Red Lobster when we were having this conversation. I think we were on our way in. This is how much of it I remember. I can't remember the other conversation about the fucking tilts of the planets and stuff, but I can remember Jackass Dad because of how impactful it was. Another side note, I'm going to try to come back to this as quickly as I can. But one of the things my mother used to say all the time that I fucking hated, by the way, was like, if you didn't remember, it must not be important. Like, first of all, I have ADD. Remembering shit's really hard sometimes. Important might be the wrong word. Maybe that's kind of in the area, though. But here's the thing. If somebody hits you in the face with a baseball bat, it's probably not important, but it is impactful. Now, you might be like, well, why did you get hit in the face with a baseball bat? You'll remember, but the event itself of the baseball bat hitting you in the face, it's not like it's important for the future in general. You might be like, well, maybe whatever happened, I will try not to do. But the impactfulness of the baseball bat to the face is what's making you remember. It's not about necessarily what was done or said or whatever. But it was simply, like, those things aren't the important things. Those aren't the impactful things that caused your remembering. That's the pedantry I'm trying to get across it. And I know it's being pedantic. I'm going to see if I can get you to... Fuck it. God damn it. It's like the cable is causing the problems. Because it's taut and it's circling. Anyway. It's not important that I remember, the base. And this was always, an analogy that I thought of years later. The baseball bat hitting you in the face is not an important event. It's an impactful event. It's not important in the sense of, like, I don't know, a wedding anniversary is important, this kind of thing. Important in her mind was always a qualifier of, for all intents and purposes, in her mind, important meant it mattered to her. If it mattered to her, then it was important. That's what important was in her mind. Which is why I forgot a lot of stuff that were important to her and thus were not important to me. That's really what it boiled down to. But getting back to the thing, and obviously this is why I'm so argumentative, and this is why I'm so combative, and this is why I tend to be a fact-checking, know-it-all asshole. Because I grew up with people like that. I grew up with people who were supposed to be responsible adults raising a child, and they weren't, and they were bad at it, and they destroyed my humanity. And so one of the few things that I could do well was be right about stuff. But again, part of that destroyed a bit of my humanity. Because I wasn't empathetic to the other side when it came to getting those people to understand. And that's really, I think, the most important term out of all of that, empathy. I am a patient man in a lot of ways. Especially in person. But it also depends a lot of times on the attitude of the other person. Which is important. Because many other people are similar. They too are patient. Depending on the attitude of the person they're talking to. And if I'm the asshole in the room, then they're not going to want to be patient with me. So what I'm trying to get at least in regards to this, is that I need to take to heart that thing I typed that I had said. I'm not trying to be right. I'm trying to get you to be right. I want you to be right. But I want you to be right with the right info. So just because you're telling me something, I don't want that information to be right. I don't want you to feel right about the wrong information. I want you to feel right about the right information. Because we all want to feel right. Nobody wants to be corrected, for the most part. I like being corrected, but it also depends on how you do it.
And I'm trying to figure out a way to tie it back to the car thing, and I can't. Just to give you an idea of my thought process. But I think this video has gone on too long. But yeah, I want you to be right, which is why I correct you. But I might do it wrong. So I need to learn how to do that right, because that will be more productive. Have fun.